Welcome back, everyone. Today we're diving deep into Soneium. It's a new thing from Sony Block Solutions Labs.
Yeah, Sony getting into Web3, it's kind of the big deal, right? Not just another blockchain announcement.
Yeah, exactly. They've got that history in tech and, of course, a huge understanding of the whole creative side of things, which I think is really interesting for this space.
Totally. And we're looking at, their first announcements, the technical documents, stuff like that. It gives us a direct look into what they're thinking, the foundations of it all.
Absolutely. So what we want to do today is unpack it all for you. Like, what exactly is Soneium? Why should anybody who's into Web3 care? And what could potentially make it different from, everything else that's out there?
Yeah, the big question. So let's just jump right in. I guess first things first, what is Soneium at its core? What are we even talking about?
So Soneium is being presented as an Ethereum Layer 2 blockchain ecosystem.
Okay, Layer 2. Got it.
Yeah, so for those following along, this means it's not trying to create a whole new blockchain. It's building on what Ethereum already has going on. The security, all the existing users.
Makes sense. Build on what works.
Yeah, and the main goal there is to improve speed and lower costs. You can think of it like, imagine building a faster, more efficient transit system, but it plugs directly into a massive existing highway network.
I like that analogy.
Right. So it's not reinventing the wheel, just making the existing one work better.
Definitely. So they want to build on Ethereum, but what for? What's the grand plan?
Well, they've said their goal is to invoke emotion and empower creativity by connecting Web3, blockchain stuff, with the regular internet Web 2, as they call it.
Trying to bridge that gap. Interesting.
Yeah, make blockchain feel less like a separate niche thing and more like, just a natural part of how we use the internet every day.
Invoke emotion and empower creativity. That sounds very Sony, doesn't it?
Totally. So speaking of Sony, who's actually behind Soneium, who's running the show?
So Soneium is being developed by Sony Block Solutions Labs, a joint venture between Sony Group Corporation and Startail Group.
Ah, Startail Group, they're big in the Web3 scene.
Yeah, they're the team behind Astar Network, so they know their stuff. But the Sony part of this partnership is really interesting. You've got Sony, this huge name in entertainment, tech, decades of experience, reaching people, partnering with a Web3 focused group. Yeah. Powerful combo.
Definitely a power move. And Sony's corporate purpose is fill the world with emotion through the power of creativity and technology. Feels very aligned with what they're aiming for with Soneium.
Absolutely. Makes you think, doesn't it? Like, is this their big play to bring their whole, ethos to the Web3 world?
It does. So what have the people actually behind it said about this whole thing?
Well, Jin Watanabe, he's the chairman of Sony Block Solutions Labs, had spoken about wanting to build a full Web3 solution for all of Sony. Like, they want to use this tech to deliver something unique to their customers.
That's ambitious. And then there's Sota Watanabe, a director at Sony Block Solutions Labs, who's also the founder of Astar Network. He's got this really interesting take on bridging the current gap in Web3.
Oh, yeah, I've heard him talk about that.
Yeah, he says a lot of the focus has been on building for people who already use Web3, which kind of neglects, everyone else.
True, you got to appeal to a wider audience.
Right. And he says that's where Sony's experience comes in. They've got those massive distribution channels and existing audiences, huge potential to bring Web3 to the mainstream through Soneium, he says.
Makes sense. They've already got the audience. They just need to give them something they'll actually use. So with all that in mind, what's the big picture for Soneium? What are they actually trying to achieve?
Their stated vision is to, and I quote, realize the open internet that transcends boundaries.
Wow, it's pretty grand.
It is. But they've also laid out some core values that give us a better idea of how they plan to make that happen.
Okay, break those down.
All right. The 3 core values are emotion, creative, and go mainstream.
Okay, I like those. Emotion, creative, mainstream. I can get behind that. But what do they actually mean?
Good point. So emotion is about building things that are engaging, exciting, creating experiences.
Makes sense. Got to capture people's attention.
Exactly. Creative is all about, empowering creativity, using it to drive innovation in Web3. And go mainstream is, as it sounds, getting Web3 out there, adopted by tons of people, making it part of everyday life.
I see. So it's not just about the tech itself. It's about how people experience it, how accessible it is?
Exactly. It shouldn't just be for the techie people, but for everybody.
I agree. And what about the actual ecosystem? What are they planning to build?
Well, they're talking about a complete Web3 ecosystem, from the infrastructure, the foundation, all the way to the apps that people use.
Okay, the whole shebang.
Yeah, and they're specifically talking about supporting creators, fan engagement, and importantly, things like protecting intellectual property rights.
The creator economy aspect, that's
Right.
really relevant these days.
Absolutely, and finding new ways for creators to make money from their work.
That's always a challenge, especially in the digital world. Okay, so big vision, focus on creators, but we still haven't really talked about the actual tech behind it. We know it's an Ethereum Layer 2, but what's powering it?
All right, under the hood, Soneium is being built with Optimism's OP stack and superchain architecture.
Optimism. I've heard of them. They're a big name in Layer 2 scaling, right?
They are. This basically means that Soneium will be fully compatible with the Ethereum Virtual Machine, or EVM. That's a big plus for developers because it means they can easily take existing Ethereum apps and bring them over to Soneium.
I see. So it's not like starting from scratch, building everything new?
Nope. It's leveraging what already exists. And by using the OP stack as a layer 2, Soneium gets all the benefits of Ethereum's security, but with better scalability. Transactions are faster and cheaper, which is a huge plus for the people using it.
Right. Nobody wants to wait forever for a transaction to go through or pay a ton in fees.
Exactly. Speaking of developers, what kind of environment are they creating for the people who will actually build things on Soneium?
They seem really focused on making it a smooth experience for developers. They have a testnet Monado that's been live since November 2024, so developers can start building and experimenting right away. And they've said they're going to have a ton of documentation to help people get started no matter what their skill level is.
So it's not just for the experts, the people who've been in the blockchain space forever.
Not at all. It sounds like they want to make it accessible to everyone. And it's not just documentation, they're also talking about specific tools and support for developers.
That's important. You need the right tools for the job.
Absolutely. They're going to have their own developer tools, but they'll also support third-party tools that developers are already used to. And dedicated support channels, too, so developers can get help if they need it.
That makes a big difference. Knowing there's someone to help you out if you get stuck. So it sounds like they're putting a lot of effort into making Soneium developer-friendly.
Definitely. And ultimately, that's good for everyone, right? The easier it is for developers to build, the more cool apps we get to use.
I completely agree. Okay, so we've talked about the tech, the developers, but what about that go mainstream value we mentioned earlier? How are they actually going to get Soneium into the hands of everyday people?
Well, they have this initiative called, wait for it, #GM with Soneium.
Patchy?
Right. And it really underscores their focus on bridging that gap between the current Web3 world and the apps that billions of people use every day. They want to make Web3 less intimidating, more integrated into our normal online lives.
So less of a niche thing, more of just how the internet works.
Exactly. And that involves a few things. They're talking about creating apps that are easy to use, intuitive, things that feel natural for people who aren't already familiar with blockchain tech.
Yeah, that's key. And they're also focused on helping developers deal with all the regulations around the world. You know, that could be a huge barrier to actually getting something adopted on a global scale.
Oh yeah, the legal side is a whole other beast.
Totally. So they want to simplify that. Give developers the tools to build apps that comply with regulations, which would open the door to a much wider audience.
Smart move. Now, let's talk about these partnerships. They've highlighted Astar Network as a special partner, and then they've got a bunch of launch partners too. Seems like a pretty big part of their plan.
Absolutely. So the special partner, Astar Network, which remember is a ZKEVM. It's a really interesting one.
ZKEVM. Remind me what that stands for again.
Zero Knowledge Ethereum Virtual Machine. Basically, a way to bring privacy and scalability to Ethereum apps.
Okay, got it. So why is Astar so special?
Well, remember how Sota Watanabe is involved with both Sony Block Solutions Labs and Astar? There's definitely some synergy there.
Oh yeah, he's a busy guy.
Right. They're aiming for a deep integration between Astar and Soneium, which would make the ASTR token, Astar's native token, much more useful within the Soneium ecosystem.
That makes sense, leveraging the existing Astar community.
Exactly. It's more than just a casual partnership. It's a real strategic move.
So what have the Astar folks said about this?
Sota Watanabe has talked about moving the Astar Layer 2 and its community into Soneium, specifically to target that lack of mainstream adoption we were talking about earlier. He wants to use Sony's influence to make Web3 something everyone uses.
Okay. Bold move.
Right. And Martin Henskins, the head of Astar Foundation, is really excited about this partnership. They're all about making Web3 accessible and seeing this collaboration as a way to help the Astar community grow too.
It sounds like a win-win situation.
Totally. Okay, so that's the special partner. Now, the launch partners are all big names in the Web3 space. We already mentioned Optimism.
Right, they provide the OP stack that Soneium is built on. What else have they said about this partnership?
Ryan Wyatt from Optimism said that Sony Group joining is a big deal for their growing network of chains. It also implies that Soneium will be giving some of its network revenue back to the Optimism Collective, which makes that whole ecosystem even stronger.
Okay, so Sony's involvement is good for Optimism too. That's cool. What about the other launch partners? Who else is on board?
So you've got Chainlink. They're providing their decentralized Oracle network, which is really important for making sure that the data used in Soneium apps is secure and reliable.
Data security is absolutely crucial in the Web3 world. What are the Chainlink folks saying about this?
Johan Eid from Chainlink Labs sees Sony entering the space as a huge validation for the whole blockchain industry, which I think is an interesting point. They're also really enthusiastic about supporting Soneium and helping it get adopted globally.
Yeah, having a name like Sony behind it definitely gives it legitimacy. Okay, who else is on the launch partner list?
We've also got Alchemy, a major player in Web3 development tools and infrastructure.
Alchemy, I've heard of them. They're big on making it easier for developers to build stuff.
Exactly. Their CEO, Nikhil Viswanathan, believes Soneium is a key step in bringing Web3 to everyday people, especially because it combines entertainment, gaming, and finance, which are all areas where Sony's really strong.
Makes sense. Use those strengths to reach a wider audience. Who else?
Circle is also a launch partner, which means their stablecoin, USDC, will be key for transactions within the Soneium ecosystem.
USDC, that's a big one. People need a stable way to make transactions. What's Circle's take on this?
Jeremy Allaire, Circle's CEO, is really emphasizing the importance of open, accessible blockchain tech for mainstream adoption. He thinks this collaboration with Sony could be a game changer for how we experience digital stuff.
Interesting. Anyone else?
Last but not least, there's The Graph.
Ah, the graph. Data indexing, right. They're like the Google of blockchains.
Pretty much. They make it easy for developers to access information stored on the blockchain. Teagan Klein, from Edge and Node, the original team behind The Graph, really commends Sony's willingness to innovate and their commitment to supporting creators in Web3.
So they're covering all the bases, huh? Security, payments, data, development tools, and a big focus on creators. It's a pretty impressive lineup of partners. Gives Soneium a strong foundation right from the start.
Definitely. Okay, so for everyone listening, if this sounds like something you want to get into, what can you do? How can you get involved?
Well, the Soneium team is really encouraging everyone, developers, creators, just anyone who's interested to check out their developer resources, which you can find on their website and in their documentation.
And where can people find those links?
They're all in the Soneium source materials we've been talking about. You
Right.
can also connect with the community on Discord and Telegram. They have links for those on their website too.
Nice. So no matter what your interest is, there's a way to get involved. They've also mentioned these Soneium ecosystem badges.
Yeah, they had a blog post about that back in March. It sounds like they're creating a system to reward and engage with the community, maybe some kind of rewards program.
Cool. And they also ran a Soneium Conquest campaign earlier this year. Looks like they're doing a lot to build some hype around this thing.
Definitely. They seem really committed to building a community around Soneium, not just the tech itself.
I like that. So as we wrap up this deep dive, what are the key takeaways for our listeners? What should they remember about Soneium?
The big takeaway is that Soneium is a major move by Sony into Web3 with an Ethereum Layer 2 solution that's laser-focused on mainstream adoption. Their emphasis on creativity, making things user-friendly, and building a complete ecosystem, all of that, plus the partnerships with big players like Astar, Optimism, Chainlink, Alchemy, Circle, and The Graph, it's a really unique approach.
It's exciting. It really makes you wonder, considering Sony's background in entertainment and tech, how will they use their existing strengths to bridge the gap between, digital ownership and the everyday stuff we do online?
Yeah.
Could this finally be the thing that brings blockchain to the masses in a way that makes sense for everyone?
That's the big question, isn't it? And with a giant company like Sony getting into Web3 through Layer 2, it does make you think, what could this mean for how regular people use blockchain in the future? Will we even notice it?
Fascinating stuff. So if you're curious, we encourage you to check out the source materials we've talked about and really dig into the Soneium ecosystem. You can form your own opinions about what it all means, but this is definitely one to watch.
Absolutely. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive, everyone.
Until next time.